Sarah Chun sat in the back row of the genetics classroom. Her desk was small compared to the others. Most of her classmates were much bigger than humans. The Thoraxians needed wide seats for their forearms. The Vectari had long tails that curled around their chairs. The Zelani teacher, Professor Kethfer, stood at the front with his purple skin glowing softly. "Today we study genetic codes of different species," Professor Kethfer said. His voice was calm and deep. Each species has unique patterns that tell the story of their evolution. Sarah looked around the room. She was the only human in advanced genetics. Most aliens thought humans were interesting but weak. They were always surprised that humans had made it to space at all. The professor touched the control panel. A large blue screen appeared in the air above his head. Bright lines and dots filled the screen. "This is the genetic code of my people, the Zelani," he said with pride. The genetic code looked clean and neat. Green lines ran straight across the screen. Small blue dots marked important genes. Everything looked organized and perfect. The other students nodded with approval. "Notice how clean our genetic structure is," the professor continued. "Our DNA has very little waste. Each gene has a clear purpose. This is the mark of a species that evolved in a stable environment." A Thoraxian student raised one of her forearms. "Professor, how much waste DNA do most species have?" "Excellent question, Zara," Professor Kethfer replied. "Most advanced species have less than 1% of their DNA that serves no clear purpose. We call this junk DNA. It usually comes from old viral infections or copying errors." The professor changed the screen. Now it showed Thoraxian genetic code. The pattern was different but still clean. Long yellow lines crossed the blue background. Again, everything looked neat and organized. "The Thoraxians also show excellent genetic organization," the professor said. "Less than 0.5% junk DNA. Very impressive." More genetic codes appeared on the screen. The Vectari had twisted patterns that looked like art. The Christine had genetic codes that looked like music notes. Each species had clean, beautiful patterns with very little waste. Sarah started to feel nervous. She knew what was coming next. "Now," Professor Kethfer said, "let us examine the genetic code of our human student." He smiled at Sarah, but she could see worry in his large black eyes. Screen changed. What appeared made several students gasp. Others made sounds of shock. Some covered their eyes. The human genetic code was a mess. Red sections scattered everywhere across the blue background. Broken lines and twisted patterns filled the screen. Dark patches marked areas that looked corrupted or damaged. The genetic code looked like a battlefield after a terrible war. "Oh my!" whispered a Zelani student sitting near Sarah. "How is this possible?" Professor Kethfer's purple skin turned darker. He looked at the screen, then at Sarah, then back at the screen. His expression showed concern and confusion. "This is highly unusual," the professor said slowly. "The human genetic code shows massive amounts of foreign DNA integrated into the basic structure." A Vectari student turned to look at Sarah. "Are humans sick? Is this some kind of disease?" Sarah felt her face turn red. She had expected this reaction. Humans always look broken when compared to other species. Their bodies were weak. Their lifespans were short. And now their genetic code looked corrupted. Professor Kethfer touched his control panel again. Numbers appeared next to the human genetic code. "The computer analysis shows that approximately 8% of human DNA appears to come from viral sources," he said. His voice was gentle, but worried that the classroom fell silent. 8% was enormous compared to other species. Most species had less than 1% foreign DNA, and that was considered a lot. "Professor," said a Thoraxian student, "how do humans survive with so much viral corruption in their genes?" Sarah watched the professor struggle to find an answer. He looked at charts and data on his control screen. He touched different controls, trying to understand what he was seeing. I am not certain, Professor Kethver admitted. Perhaps human medical technology helps them manage these genetic problems. Or maybe humans have learned to live with damaged DNA. The students began to whisper among themselves. Sarah heard words like broken, corrupted, and diseased. Some students looked at her with pity. Others seemed worried they might catch something from being near her dot. Sarah felt anger building inside her chest. She had worked hard to get into advanced genetics. She was one of the top students in the class. But now, everyone was looking at her like she was a broken toy. Professor Kethver seemed to sense the uncomfortable mood in the room. Of course, he said quickly, humans have still managed to achieve space travel and join the galactic community. This shows great determination in overcoming their genetic challenges. This made Sarah even more angry. Overcome genetic challenges? Like humans were disabled children who had learned to walk despite their problems? She raised her hand. Yes, Sarah? The professor said. He looked nervous about what she might ask. Sarah stood up slowly. The room became very quiet. She looked at the red and black patches covering the human genetic code on the screen. She looked at her classmates, staring at her with concern and pity. She looked at Professor Kethver, who was clearly trying to be kind while discussing how broken humans appeared to be. Then Sarah asked the question that would change everything. Professor, she said in a clear, calm voice, you said 8% of our genetic code comes from viruses, but you called it corruption and junk DNA. She paused and looked around the room. I have a question about that. Professor Kethver nodded encouragingly. Please, ask your question. Sarah looked directly at him. Why does 8% of our genetic code come from viruses we survived? The room became dead silent. Professor Kethver's mouth opened, but no words came out. Several students looked confused, not understanding what Sarah meant. But Sarah was not finished. She looked at the genetic code on the screen again. All those red sections and dark patches that looked like damage. Those are not corruptions, she said quietly. Those are trophies. The word trophies hung in the air like smoke. Professor Kethver stared at Sarah with his large black eyes. His purple skin had turned pale. The other students looked confused, turning their heads between Sarah and the professor. Trophies? Asked Zara, the Thoraxian student. Her forearms moved nervously. What do you mean by trophies? Sarah remained standing. She pointed at the genetic code still displayed on the screen. The red sections looked like wounds across the blue background. Professor, when you see viral DNA in a genetic code, what does that usually mean? Professor Kethver's tentacle-like fingers moved slowly across his control panel. It usually means the virus infected the species at some point in their evolution, he said carefully. The viral genetic material becomes part of the host DNA. Right, Sarah said. And what normally happens to species when viruses infect them? A Vectari student answered before the professor could speak. They get sick. Sometimes they die. If the virus is bad enough, the whole species might go extinct. Sarah nodded. Exactly. So if viral DNA is found in a species' genetic code, what does that tell us? The professor's skin was now almost white. His hand shook slightly as he touched his controls. It tells us the species survived the viral infection. One viral infection, Sarah said. She walked closer to the front of the classroom. But look at our genetic code again. How many different viral sequences do you see? Professor Kethver looked at his screen. He pressed several buttons. Numbers appeared next to the human genetic display. His eyes grew wider as he read the results. Computer shows over 400 distinct viral genetic sequences integrated into human DNA. he whispered. The classroom erupted in noise. Students gasped and spoke in their various languages. Some stood up from their seats. Others moved away from Sarah as if she might be dangerous. 400? Shouted a Christine student. That is impossible. No species could survive 400 viral infections. Sarah smiled for the first time that day. Professor, could you run a timeline analysis on those viral sequences? Show us when each virus was integrated into human DNA? Professor Kethver's hands moved quickly across his controls. He seemed unable to look away from the data appearing on his screen. A timeline appeared above the genetic code. Thousands of small marks showed up along a long line representing millions of years. This cannot be correct, the professor muttered. The computer shows viral integration events spread across nearly 6 million years of human evolution. Sarah walked to stand directly in front of the big screen. And how often did these viral integration events happen? The professor checked his data again. According to this timeline, approximately every few thousand years, sometimes more often. Some periods show multiple viral integrations happening at the same time. A Zelani student near the front raised her hand. Professor, what would happen if our people encountered just one of these viruses? Professor Kethver was quiet for a long moment. He ran several searches on his computer, based on our genetic structure and immune system capabilities. He paused. Our species would likely face extinction within months. The room became very quiet again. Students looked at each other with worry and confusion. Sarah turned to face her classmates. Every species in this room evolved on stable worlds, she said. Your planets had steady climates, predictable environments, and relatively few diseases. You developed clean, organized genetic codes because you never had to fight for survival. She pointed at the human genetic code on the screen. Earth was different. For millions of years, our world was a biological battlefield. Viruses evolved faster than we did. They changed constantly, trying to kill us. And for millions of years, we kept fighting back. A Thoraxian student spoke up. But how did humans survive so many viral attacks? Your immune systems must be incredibly strong. Sarah shook her head. Not stronger, smarter. We did not just fight off viruses. We learned from them. Every time. A virus tried to kill us and failed. Our bodies took pieces of its genetic code and added them to our own DNA. Professor Kethver was now staring at his screen with amazement. The human immune system can incorporate viral genetic material and use it for defense purposes? More than that, Sarah said. Each viral sequence in our DNA is like a memory. Our immune systems can recognize similar threats and respond faster. We carry the genetic history of every biological war our species has ever won. A Vectari student looked scared. You mean humans still carry active viral genetic code inside? Their bodies? Not active in the way you think, Sarah explained. The viral DNA has been changed and controlled by our genetic systems. We turned our enemies into tools. Professor Kethver ran more searches on his computer. Sarah, are you saying that these viral sequences give humans some kind of advantage? Sarah nodded. Professor, could you look up the medical records for humans working in galactic hospitals? Specifically, check how often humans get sick compared to other species. The professor's fingers moved quickly across his controls. Medical data appeared on a new screen. His expression changed from confusion to shock. This is remarkable, he said. Human medical workers have infection rates nearly 10 times lower than other species. They recover from illnesses 3 times faster than average. And they seem to be immune to several diseases that affect most galactic species. Sarah looked around the room at her classmates. Many of them were staring at her with new expressions. Not pity or worry, but something like respect or fear. Those red sections you thought were corruption? Sarah said, pointing at the screen. Those are not scars from battles we lost. Those are medals from battles we won. She walked back toward her seat. When you look at human genetic code, you are not seeing a broken species struggling with genetic damage. You are looking at the only species in known galactic history to fight a 6 million-year biological war and win. Professor Cathver saved all the data on his computer. His hands were still shaking. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I believe our understanding of human genetics may have been completely wrong." Sarah sat down at her small desk. "Professor, there is something else you should know." The professor looked at her with nervous anticipation. "What?" "The war is not over. Viruses on Earth are still evolving and trying to kill humans. We are still fighting them. And we are still winning." Professor Cathver dismissed class early that day. But Sarah did not leave. Neither did several other students. They gathered around the professor's desk while he worked frantically at his computer. "Computer, cross-reference all viral genetic sequences found in human DNA," the professor commanded. "Match them with known viral strains in the galactic database." The screen filled with data. Line after line of viral information appeared. Names, characteristics, infection methods, and mortality rates scrolled past faster than anyone could read. "Computer, how many viral sequences have matches in our database?" Professor Cathver asked. 112 viral sequences match known galactic viral strains. The computer answered in its calm voice. "Zara." The Thoraxian student moved closer to the screen. "What about the other viral sequences? The ones that do not match?" "Computer," the professor continued, "how many viral sequences in human DNA have no matches in our database?" 291 viral sequences have no matches in current galactic viral databases. The room fell silent. Sarah watched her classmates try to understand what this meant. "Those viruses are extinct," Sarah said quietly. "They existed on Earth, tried to kill humans, failed, and then disappeared. We are the only record that they ever existed." Professor Cathver's skin had turned completely white. "Computer, analyze the 112 viral strains that match our database. What are their typical mortality rates for known galactic species?" The computer worked for several seconds. Average mortality rate across galactic species, 87%. Recommended containment level, maximum quarantine. Warning: exposure to any of these viral strains requires immediate medical intervention for all known species except humans. A Vectari student stepped backward from the screen. "You mean humans carry genetic code from viruses that would kill most of us?" "Not just carry," Professor Cathver said, his voice full of amazement. "They survived them. All of them." He turned to Sarah. "How is this possible?" Sarah thought about how to explain Earth to beings who had never experienced real biological warfare. "Professor, what do you know about human evolution?" "Very little," he admitted. "Human records from before space travel are incomplete. We know humans evolved on a planet called Earth, but we have limited information about the environment. Earth is not like other worlds," Sarah said. "Our planet went through multiple mass extinction events. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, and climate changes happened regularly. But the worst threats were biological." She pointed to the screen showing viral data. Earth's environment forced rapid evolution, not just in humans, but in all life forms. Viruses, bacteria, fungi, and parasites evolved constantly. They became more deadly, more infectious, and more creative in their attacks. Professor Cathver pulled up more data. "Computer, analyze Earth's biological diversity compared to other known worlds." New information filled the screen. Charts and graphs showed biological complexity levels for different planets. "Remarkable," the professor whispered. "Earth shows biological complexity levels nearly 50 times higher than the galactic average." The number of viral strains alone exceeds most entire planetary ecosystems. And humans evolved in the middle of all that, Sarah said. Every generation of our ancestors faced new biological threats. Those who could not adapt died. Those who could adapt survived and had children. A Christine student spoke up. But adaptation usually means changing genetic code slowly over many generations. How could humans adapt fast enough to survive constant viral attacks? Sarah smiled. We did not just adapt. We learned to steal. Steal? Asked Zara. When viruses infected our ancestors, our immune systems did not just fight them off, Sarah explained. We captured parts of their genetic code and added those parts to our own DNA. Each virus that tried to kill us made us stronger. Professor Kethver was now running multiple searches at once. Data flowed across several screens. Computer, compare human immune system complexity to other galactic species. The results appeared quickly. Bar graphs showed immune system capabilities across different species. The human bar was so much larger than the others that the computer had to use a different scale. Human immune systems show adaptability ratings over 2,000% above galactic average. The computer reported. Warning: human immune systems demonstrate active learning capabilities not observed in other species. Active learning capabilities? Professor Kethver asked. Sarah nodded. Our immune systems can study new threats and develop defenses in real time. We can survive diseases that we have never encountered before. Sometimes our bodies can fight off infections faster than the diseases can spread. The professor pulled up medical records again. Computer, show hospital infection rates for humans working in galactic medical facilities. New data appeared. The numbers were shocking. Humans working in galactic hospitals show infection rates of 0.3%, the computer said. All other species working in the same facilities show average infection rates of 15.7%. Zara's forearms moved nervously. How do humans avoid getting sick so often? We do get sick, Sarah said. But our bodies fight off infections so quickly that we often do not notice. What would put you in a hospital for weeks might give humans a slight headache for a few hours. Professor Kethver found more disturbing information. Computer, show recorded cases of galactic species exposure to Earth-based pathogens. A new screen showed medical emergency reports. Incident after incident described alien species becoming severely ill from exposure to what humans considered minor infections. Look at this report, the professor said, pointing to one file. A Zilani diplomat visited Earth and was hospitalized for 3 weeks after exposure to what humans call the common cold. The report says this minor human illness nearly killed him. Sarah looked sad. We tried to warn everyone before first contact. We told galactic authorities that Earth was biologically dangerous. But no one understood how dangerous until after several medical emergencies. Computer, Professor Kethver continued. Show current quarantine protocols for Earth. Official galactic documents appeared on screen. The quarantine rules were extensive and strict. All non-human visitors to Earth must receive extensive medical treatment before and after exposure, the computer read. Minimum quarantine period, 30 days. Required medical monitoring, 6 months. Warning: Earth's biological environment poses extreme danger to all known galactic species. The students looked at Sarah with new understanding. She had grown up on a world so biologically dangerous that it was quarantined from the rest of the galaxy. Sarah, Professor Kethver said quietly, what is it like to live on such a dangerous world? Sarah thought about Earth. She remembered playing outside without any protective gear. She remembered drinking water from streams and eating fresh fruit from trees. She remembered never worrying about diseases or infections. To us, Earth feels safe, she said. We evolved there. Everything on Earth evolved together. The dangerous biological environment that would kill other species is just normal life to us. Professor Keth versed all the research data he had collected. Class, I believe we need to completely change how we think about human genetics, he announced. What we saw as genetic damage is actually genetic victory. He looked at the human genetic code still displayed on the main screen. The red sections and dark patches no longer looked like corruption. They looked like battle scars worn with pride. Sarah, he said, would you be willing to help us learn more about human biological capabilities? This could revolutionize our understanding of genetics and medicine. Sarah nodded. Professor, there is still much more you need to know about humans and biological warfare. Word spread quickly through the university. By the next morning, Professor Kethver's office was crowded with scientists, medical doctors, and government officials. Sarah sat in the corner, watching dozens of aliens argue about human genetics. This cannot be accurate, said Dr. Vextar, the head of Galactic Medical Research. His blue skin was darker than usual, showing his stress. No species could survive the biological warfare described in these reports. Professor Kethver displayed the human genetic code again. The evidence is clear, Dr. Vextar. Humans carry genetic records of over 400 viral encounters. Each encounter represents a species-level survival event. Species-level survival event? Asked Commander Joel, a military officer from the Thoraxian Defense Force. Explain what that means. Sarah stood up. It means each virus in our genetic code once threatened to kill all humans everywhere. And we survived it. Dr. Vextar shook his head. Impossible. Our models show that any one of these viruses would cause extinction in 99% of known species. Your models are based on species that evolved in safe environments, Sarah replied. You assume that biological threats kill species, because that is what usually happens. But Earth was not usual. Another doctor, Professor Melvin from the Christine Medical College, raised her hand. Even if humans survived these threats, how did they maintain genetic stability? This much foreign DNA should cause massive mutations and genetic disorders. Professor Keth pulled up new research. That is perhaps the most remarkable discovery. The human genetic system not only incorporates viral DNA, but also repairs and organizes it. Computer, show the genetic stability analysis. Data appeared showing human genetic error rates compared to other species. The results surprised everyone. Human genetic code showed fewer random mutations than most galactic species, the computer reported. Error correction mechanisms exceed galactic average efficiency by 400%. Dr. Vextar stared at the data. How is that possible? More foreign DNA should mean more errors, not fewer. Sarah walked to the front of the room. Because we have been fixing genetic problems for millions of years. Our genetic systems learn to identify threats, incorporate useful information, and discard harmful elements. We became very good at genetic maintenance. Commander Zhel looked worried. Are you saying humans can control their own genetic code? Not control exactly, Sarah said. But we can adapt and repair genetic damage much faster than other species. Our bodies learn to treat genetic threats like any other kind of infection. Professor Melvin accessed her own research files. This explains several medical mysteries we have encountered. Computer, display human medical response data from galactic hospitals. New information filled the screens. Medical records from across the galaxy showed human patients recovering from injuries and illnesses at impossible speeds. Look at these cases, Professor Melvin said, pointing to different reports. Humans recovering from radiation exposure in days instead of months. Humans surviving toxin exposure that should have been fatal. Humans regenerating tissue damage faster than our medical equipment can measure. We thought humans were just unusually resilient, Dr. Vextar admitted. We never considered that they might be biologically superior in defense capabilities. Sarah felt uncomfortable with the word superior. Not superior, she said. Different. We evolved under different conditions. Our biology reflects the environment that created us. Commander Zhao was taking notes on a small device. What about offensive biological capabilities? Can humans use biological warfare as effectively as they defend against it? The room became quiet. Sarah realized this was a dangerous question. Humans do not use biological warfare, she said carefully. We learn to defend against biological threats, not to create them. But the capability exists? Commander Zhou pressed. Professor Kethfer intervened. Commander, this research session is focused on medical and genetic understanding, not military applications. Dr. Vextar pulled up more medical data. Sarah, we need to understand human medical practices. Our records show that human medical teams achieve success rates far above galactic standards. How do humans treat diseases in other species? Sarah thought about human doctors and nurses working in galactic hospitals. Human medical training includes studying many different biological systems. We learn to recognize patterns and adapt treatments quickly. Our experience with biological threats helps us understand how diseases work. Computer, Dr. Vextar commanded. Show treatment success rates for human medical personnel compared to other species. The results were dramatic. Human medical teams showed success rates 20 to 30% higher than their alien colleagues in treating most conditions. Remarkable, Professor Melvin said. Human medical teams succeed at treating conditions they have never encountered before. How is that possible? Pattern recognition, Sarah explained. When you have survived thousands of different biological threats, you become very good at recognizing how new threats work. Human doctors can often predict how diseases will behave and how treatments will work. Dr. Vextar was now looking at Sarah with something like awe. Sarah, do you realize what this means for galactic medicine? Human biological knowledge could revolutionize healthcare across all species. Sarah nodded slowly. Many humans have been trying to share medical knowledge for years, but most species assume their own medical systems are more advanced. Because we assumed humans were biologically inferior, Professor Kethfer said quietly. We thought human medicine was primitive because humans seemed weak and short-lived. Commander Jill asked another question. Sarah, are there other biological capabilities that humans possess but have not shared with the galactic community? Sarah looked around the room at dozens of alien faces watching her with intense curiosity. She realized that everything she said would be recorded and analyzed by governments and militaries across the galaxy. Humans have always been willing to share medical knowledge, she said carefully. We have published research, trained alien medical students, and provided emergency medical assistance during crises. The information has always been available. Dr. Vextar checked his records. She is correct. Human medical research has been available in galactic databases for years. We simply did not understand its significance. Professor Melvin stood up. We need to organize a comprehensive review of human medical practices. This could save millions of lives across the galaxy. Agreed, said Dr. Vextar. Sarah, would you be willing to help coordinate this research? We need human perspectives to understand these biological capabilities properly. Sarah looked at Professor Kethfer, who nodded encouragingly. I will help, she said. But there is one thing you need to understand first. What is that? Asked Dr. Vextar. Sarah pointed to the human genetic code still displayed on the screen. All those red sections that had once looked like corruption and damage. Humans are still evolving, she said. We are still fighting biological warfare on Earth, and we are still winning. The genetic capabilities you see today are not our final form. We are still getting stronger. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Humans were not just survivors of ancient biological wars. They were active participants in an ongoing conflict that had shaped them for millions of years and continued to shape them today. Commander Gilles broke the silence. How much stronger might humans become? Sarah smiled, but there was no humor in her expression. We do not know. We have never reached the limits of what our biology can achieve. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the largest auditorium at the university. Every seat was filled. Students, professors, doctors, and government officials from across the galaxy had come to hear her speak. The room was so crowded that many aliens stood in the aisles and corridors. Professor Kethver introduced her to the audience. His purple skin glowed with pride and excitement. Today, we hear from Sarah Chun, the human who helped us understand the greatest biological achievement in galactic history. Sarah walked to the center of the stage. Above her head, a huge screen showed the human genetic code. But now the display looked completely different. The red sections that had once appeared to be corruption were highlighted in gold. The dark patches that had seemed like damage now glowed with soft light. 6 months ago, Sarah began, I sat in a genetics classroom where my DNA was displayed as an example of genetic failure. My professor and classmates saw broken code, viral corruption, and biological damage. She gestured to the screen above her. Today, we understand that what you were seeing was not failure, but victory. Every red section represents a biological war that humanity survived. Every dark patch shows evidence of adaptation and strength. The audience listened in complete silence. Representatives from over 40 species filled the auditorium. Many were taking notes or recording her words. The Human Resilience Studies program has now been established at 37 galactic universities, Sarah continued. Human medical techniques are being taught to doctors throughout known space. Hospital success rates have improved by an average of 25% where human methods are applied. Dr. Vextar, sitting in the front row, nodded approvingly. His team had published 12 research papers on human biological capabilities. Each paper had revolutionized understanding in different areas of medicine. But we have learned that biology is just the beginning, Sarah said. Human survival capabilities extend far beyond genetics and medicine. She touched a control panel, and the screen changed to show comparative data between humans and other species. Humans demonstrate superior adaptation in extreme environments, she explained. Humans can survive in temperature ranges that would kill most species. Humans can function with limited food, water, and oxygen for extended periods. Humans recover from physical and psychological trauma faster than any other known species. A Vaktari professor raised his hand. Sarah, our research suggests that humans also possess unusual mental resilience. Can you explain this? Sarah nodded. Psychological survival and biological survival developed together in humans. On Earth, species that could not handle stress, fear, and uncertainty died quickly. Humans learned to function effectively under extreme psychological pressure. She showed new data on the screen. Galactic studies show that humans maintain cognitive function at 90% efficiency even under severe stress conditions. Most other species show cognitive decline to 30% or lower under similar stress. Commander Gilles, who had been attending these lectures regularly, asked a question. Sarah, how does this mental resilience relate to human military capabilities? Sarah paused carefully before answering. Military questions always made her nervous. Humans are effective in conflict situations because we evolved in constant conflict. But our greatest strength is not fighting. Our greatest strength is surviving. Professor Melvin stood up. Sarah, your people have shared medical knowledge freely with all species. Human doctors and researchers work in hospitals across the galaxy. Why do humans help so willingly? Sarah smiled. Because survival is not just about staying alive. It is about ensuring that life continues. Helping other species survive helps everyone survive. She changed the screen to show images from human medical missions throughout the galaxy. Human doctors treating alien patients. Human researchers working with alien scientists. Human emergency teams responding to medical crises on distant worlds. Humans understand that biological threats do not respect species boundaries, Sarah said. A virus that kills Zilani today might adapt to kill humans tomorrow. We survive best when everyone survives. An older Thoraxian professor asked, Sarah, what does this mean for the future? How will this knowledge change relationships between humans and other species? Sarah looked around the auditorium at hundreds of alien faces watching her with respect and curiosity. 6 months ago, these same species had viewed humans as genetically damaged weaklings. Now they saw humans as biologically superior survivors. I hope it means we can learn from each other, she said. Humans have biological and survival advantages. But other species have advantages too. Zilani have superior pattern recognition. Thoraxians have better spatial reasoning. Christine have remarkable artistic and creative abilities. She gestured to the audience. Each species evolved to survive in different environments. Each species developed different strengths. Humans survived biological warfare, so we became good at biological defense. But we are not superior at everything. Professor Kethver stood up to ask the final question. Sarah, you said earlier that humans are still evolving. What do you think humans will become in the future? Sarah thought about Earth, still fighting its biological wars. She thought about human children growing up stronger and more adaptable with each generation. She thought about human medical teams spreading across the galaxy, learning to treat new diseases and help new species. We will become whatever we need to become to survive, she said. That is what humans do. We adapt. We overcome. We endure. She looked at the genetic code displayed above her head. All those golden sections representing millions of years of survival and victory. Every virus that tried to kill us made us stronger. Every threat that tried to destroy us taught us how to survive. Every challenge we faced prepared us for the next challenge. Sarah walked closer to the audience. But now, our challenges are different. We are no longer fighting just for human survival. We are fighting for galactic survival. We are learning to protect not just our own species, but all species. She pointed to the genetic code one more time. Those viral sequences in our DNA are not just records of human victories. They are libraries of biological knowledge. They contain information that could help every species in this room survive threats they have never encountered. The auditorium erupted in applause. Species that had never shown respect for humans were now celebrating human achievements. The sound continued for several minutes. When the applause ended, Sarah spoke her final words. 6 months ago, my professor showed my genetic code and called it corruption. Today, galactic medicine is based on understanding that corruption was actually evolution. We learned that what appears to be weakness can actually be strength. What seems like damage can actually be victory. She smiled at Professor Kethver, who was wiping tears from his large black eyes. We learned it sometimes. The broken ones are actually the strongest ones of all. The screen above Sarah's head changed one final time. The human genetic code appeared, but now every section glowed with golden light. No corruption, no damage, no weakness, only victory, carried in every cell, written in every gene. and proven by 6 million years of survival against impossible odds. The humans had not just survived biological warfare. They had won it so completely that their victory was carved into their very DNA, ready to be shared with any species wise enough to learn from it. And across the galaxy, they were teaching others how to win those same battles.